watching the last PMQs of 2018 with me here in BBC Westminster with the Business Minister, Claire Perry, Labour's Barry Gardiner, and, of course, the BBC's political editor, Laura Kuenssberg. Now, perhaps as something of a bit of relief from Brexit, we've got something else to talk about for the next few moments. How important it is in the grand scheme of things, others will decide. But the camera, Mrs May finished her last answer with a kind of riff about pantomimes, I think it was. I mean, I actually got lost halfway through. But it was something like that, and her own side was shouting and joining in and all the rest of it. Mr Corbyn didn't look very happy, and when she sat down, the camera was on him, and it looks like he may have said something, but why don't you have a look at it and you can see? Let's run it.
I've got some advice for the right honourable gentleman. Look behind you. They're not impressed, and neither's the country.
So, what some believe he muttered there, probably a little bit under his breath, or at least not in a way that could be heard, is a stupid woman.
That is what it looks like, and that's already what has set social media alight, and even some Labour MPs like Stella Creasy on their online saying that looks like what he said, this is absolutely out of order. We'll have to see, of course, what he says, because what our viewers might not know is at the end of the Prime Minister's questions joust every week, the two rival spokespeople for Labour and the government then brief journalists in what we call a huddle. So I'm sure in the Labour huddle, which will be happening in a few minutes' time, his spokespeople will have to either clarify what he said, if it wasn't that, which is what the video seems to suggest, and if it was, how will they handle it? And indeed, it may well be the case that an MP actually might raise what we call a point of order in the next few minutes.
Which would also address the issue.
Which would also address the issue. But if that is what he said, then a lot of people in Westminster and, probably quite a lot of our viewers will think that's a pretty offensive thing to say about the Prime Minister, about any politician. We're always talking about parliamentary language. It gets very rough in the House of Commons, no question about that.
Tempers
but there are
rise.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a very fraught time. But there are things that MPs do not say about each other.
Okay.
That would be one.
Barry Gardiner, what did you think he said?
Look, I'm not a lip reader, but it certainly seemed that might have been it. All I would say is Jeremy is, and I think all of us would acknowledge, even Claire, that Jeremy is one of the most courteous people in Parliament. He hardly ever uses language against, inappropriate language against anyone. If that was what he said, then I'm sure he will regret it and apologise. But let's not move away from the real stupidity here, which is that we have a Prime Minister who is who's running down the clock so that she can force a false choice on members of Parliament between her deal and no deal, which Claire herself has said earlier in this programme is unacceptable and unthinkable, and is spending £2 billion of taxpayers' money on preparations for that, when all of us in Parliament know that it is an unacceptable place to end up. Right. She says we have to have a deal. Yes, we do. But what she needs to do is to actually involve Parliament, involve the opposition front bench, try and work together so we can secure one. That is what Jeremy offered at the party conference, that there is a deal, and indeed Nick Watts, who's your own colleague, your political correspondent here on Newsnight just the other night, said, look, he said, no deal, there's no chance of that getting through with the majority. Norway, no chance of that getting through with the majority. But he said, actually, the one thing that does have a chance of securing a majority in the House of Commons is Labour's proposal for a new customs union. And that's what he said. It's not my words, those are his words. And I believe that if the Prime Minister were to actually try and, for once, not just stick to her own obdurate red lines,
all right.
but to come across the chamber, we may get somewhere.
I just asked you for a quick reaction, not a speech. We understand an MP has asked, Paul Scully is asking a question about the remark. We're just going to clip that and show you it in a few moments. But Claire Perry, what's your reaction?
Well, I mean, if he said it, I hope he's going to get up and apologise profusely. He is, as Barry says, he's a courteous gentleman. I served on the Justice Select Committee with him many years ago. But I'm also very struck by, you know, when you listen to people like Claire Coburn, the very good Labour head of Haringey Council, who resigned because of the misogyny and racism in today's Labour Party. He may not be thinking that. I suspect some of his Momentum team are saying a lot worse than that than the Prime Minister. They're certainly saying a lot worse about many female Conservative MPs on social media. And Barry, you know, I think this idea that we will come together as a front bench and, you know, and discuss how to go forward with the deal is, you know, ostensibly an attractive one, but with that sort of reaction, that sort of contempt, if you like, for the leader of Her Majesty's government, that's quite a sad thing. And this, remember, was meant to be kinder, gentler politics, and it clearly isn't.
Oh, we lost that a long while
we
ago.
did.
That
It's
is
very sad.
gone.
And you know,
Let's go back to the Commons and just see what the follow-up. Paul Scully is the MP who's raised this issue.
Do you think it's appropriate language, can I ask my right honourable friend, to call people a stupid women in this chamber?
Can I say to my honourable friend that I think that everybody in this House, particularly in this 100th year anniversary of women getting the vote, should be aiming to encourage women to come into this chamber and to stand in this chamber, and should therefore use appropriate language in this chamber when they are referring to female members.
So there we go. It was a question from one of our own backbenchers, Laura, I think, to the Prime Minister. The Speaker hasn't got involved yet, as far as we know.
No, it doesn't look like it. But remember, also, Mr. Speaker has had his own tangles with some members of the female members of the government frontbench in the last few months about his own how he also handles female parliamentarians. But I couldn't see there whether or not Jeremy Corbyn himself was still in the chamber, whether or not he might be advised to just, if that is what he said, just admit it, apologise and try to move on, rather than try to hold out and turn this into a sort of, you know, one of these rows in the Commons that people outside of Westminster see people screaming and shouting and getting upset about things. But we'll see how Labour handles this in the next.
Well, there's
hour
a
or so.
Tory MP, Patrick McLaughlin, has now been on his feet asking the Speaker if Mr Corbyn shouldn't be asked to come back into the House and to apologise. And we'll see if that happens. These things tend to have a momentum of their own,
They do indeed.
particularly with
to
social.
call a confidence vote, and he's too cowardly to get up and apologise. Everyone
Well,
says
he's not
things in
been
here.
asked to
Come on,
apologise
that's very
yet.
cowardly to disappear out the chamber as quickly as you can. He knows he said
Well,
it.
they always leave around this
No,
time.
if the brave thing to do would have been to stand up and say, "I really apologise. I misspoke. Let's move on."
Let us move on. Unless we go straight back to the Commons. We can hear from the Leader of the House, Andrea Leadsom.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I would just like to ask, after your finding there that individuals who are found to have made unwelcome remarks should apologise, why it is that when an opposition member found that you had called me a stupid woman, you did not apologise in this chamber.
Well, it's certainly not being dampened down. It had been said some while ago that the Speaker of the House had referred to Andrea Leadsom as a stupid woman. We then had this bit of lip reading which seemed to suggest that Mr Corbyn had said the same of Theresa May. We've now got the Leader of the House, Andrea Leadsom, because it is she actually accusing the Speaker of the House of calling her a stupid woman too. Well, if you're looking for bread and circuses, there's going to be plenty of it today. Thank you very much. That's our final Prime Minister's Questions for the year.